Welcome to Popcast Deluxe. You're called the Make No Money disease, and Buddy got every symptom of weekly cultural review. I'm John Caramanica, a critic at the New York Times.
I'm Joe Coscarelli. I'm a reporter at the New York Times.
Joe, Popcast Deluxe arrives every week. We're going to switch it up a tiny bit.
Okay.
Just for our fans on YouTube, our
Yes.
friends on YouTube.
Yes.
If you are listening to this in your ears only and you do not know what we look like, everything is the same, basically.
But go subscribe to the channel.
But subscribe to the channel, but you should know what we look like. But everything, you'll get an episode a week. However, you should go to youtube.com/popcast. And the reason you should do that is because we are going to be rolling out the show in segments. We're going to give this a try. We're going to have newsy segments. We're going to have song segments. We're going to have snack segments. And that's going to come out over the course of a few days every week. So schedule and rollout roughly the same, but in parts, not in whole. So we want you to come and check us out. Are we going to change outfits between segments?
I'm not. Are you?
You haven't changed outfits since last April. I may. It's TBD. So given that, this week, first two segments, really the first big segment, there's a lot going on. A tight 45 on the Cindy Lee album.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. On disc one of the Cindy Lee album.
That's true.
Yeah.
A segment on disc one, B segment. Little joke for all you Pitchfork fans out there. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about the only thing that anybody is talking about, which is 20 people pointing weapons at Drake.
Right. The Kill Bill meme.
Yes, the Kill Bill
that
meme.
Drake posted.
Hello to Ernest Baker. Also
this weekend.
We're podcasting like we're Ernest Baker.
Right.
A lot going on. You and I have been spending a lot of time texting each other the last few days, as I imagine everybody has. So basically what's been going on after the Kendrick verse on the first Future and Metro album, a lot has happened. We also took last week off.
Right.
It's a strange week to take off. J. Cole.
We were saving our fire, much like Drake. We were waiting to see what happened. And then coming back hard. Yeah.
Whatever Joe says. J. Cole responded, then unresponded.
Yep. We'll get to all this.
Yes. Or should we just map out what happened?
Yeah, keep going. I mean, but we'll go in more detail.
J. Cole responded, then unresponded. The Weeknd got involved. There's a new Future and Metro album with more Rockies in there saying crazy things. Drake put out two versions of the same response record.
Someone put out two versions of Drake's response.
Yes. Filtered and unfiltered, menthol and regular. Like, I don't really know.
Mono and stereo.
Yeah.
Hit 'em up beat and Who Kid beat.
True, sure. That happened. Then there is a Kendrick response that's maybe AI.
Seeking validation from rap critics, slandering names. Legacy forever cemented, I will reign. The next move, make the best move is detrimental. Grab your Glocks when you see K-Dot better.
Maybe not.
TBD.
Depending which person on Twitter you believe, which troll on Twitter you believe. Rick Ross is out here Rick Ross, being luxurious.
You forgot the most important part.
Like, honestly, and we talked about this a little bit before, but truly, like, the most comfortable thing happening right now are the last 20 seconds of the Rick Ross outro of the Rick Ross diss record. Should we just play the beginning of the...
Blessings to whoever's doing the editing for us on... many of these songs.
Yes. But let's listen to just like the beginning of the talkie outro.
Do it where you want to do it, anytime you want to do it. I'm ready. I'm ready, white boy. Huh? I know you got your Dockers on with no underwear, white boy.
I love that this is where we started, the non-musical part
but
of the biggest beef in music.
But is it the biggest beef in music or is it the biggest beef in ego? Like what? Like how good are these records?
You tell me.
To me,
it sounds like a leading question.
Yeah, to me, the Drake finished, well, actually the Drake unfinished one, quote unquote.
That's the one.
To me, that's the one, and that's a good song. That's like an actual good song.
Although one of the very first things we said to one another when this song surfaced online, and we should let's go a little deeper. Let's set the tone.
Yeah.
Saturday, late morning, early afternoon.
I mean, I
East Coast time.
I had only recently awoken.
Right.
So
a highly compressed, let's say, audio file leaks that sounds a lot like a Drake record, but immediately the first conversation I saw was AI or not.
Which is now the default thing of anything that comes out is AI or not.
And I didn't know before I pressed play. Of course, you would assume there would be some artists. Okay, we should also say, when people say this is an AI diss track, what they mean is, much like the conversations we've had in the past, it is not made and written by a computer. It is made and written by an aspiring rapper.
A lot of y'all can't even pronounce AI.
It is made and written by an aspiring rapper who then uses
A voice filter.
an AI voice filter
Right.
to make it sound like it's Drake.
Much like we do on Popcast Deluxe. This is going to be...
Yes. But actually, here's what I want to do to start. I want to play a little bit of the first Drake leaked diss track that people were wondering, is this AI or not?
Okay.
And then I want to play a little bit of the actual AI Drake song that came out last week by the artist formerly known as Ghostwriter.
Pip squeak pipe down, you ain't in no big three. SZA got you white down, Travis got you white down, Savage got you white down. Like your label, boy, you in a scope right now. And you gon' feel the aftermath of what I write down. I'm at the top of the mountain, so you tight now. Just had this talk with your ass, I had to hike down. Big difference between Mike then and Mike now.
You should be able to tell which one is Drake and which one is not.
I don't know your name, I don't know your IG, I don't know your number, I don't know your Snap, I don't know your Twitter age, but I got a drain.
Okay, so that's a real Drake song that is leaked and in bad quality, and that is a fake Drake song.
Imagined Drake song.
An imagined Drake song.
Yes, this is a Drake song as written by a Drake fan.
Yes. So as soon as we actually pressed play on the leaked Drake diss, which, let's go right off the bat and say, the sigh at the beginning, the Drake sigh, which he's done a couple times in a couple different flavors in these moments when he's like, I can't believe
y'all.
I can't believe you're making me do this again.
Yeah.
Like, this is an all-time Drake sigh.
Yeah.
So that's the first sign that this track is real. That one didn't survive to the second version.
Which is unfortunate.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because he really sounds... This one is, like, more aggrieved than, like, the ones from the Pusha beef or from the Meek beef, you know? This is, like, there's a little anger in it, but it's still, like, I can't believe we're going to do this again. So that gave it away. And then the specifics of the song. It sounds like Drake. It's like, it's too good to be somebody faking to be Drake.
One of the challenges with the AI voice filter
Right.
is even if it credibly sounds tonally
Yep.
or texturally like the artist, often what's missing are the idiosyncrasies of flow and pattern. And Drake, really more than most rappers, certainly most superstar rappers, he manages to find a lot of separate pockets within a short period of time on songs. Like
Unlike Rick Ross, who just has one pocket.
one pocket. But Drake is constantly finding different pockets. He's varying speed. Like, it would take a lot for a computer to learn how to do that. And frankly, if you look at the oeuvre of Ghostwriter or Mr. Ghost or whatever,
Right.
obviously that person doesn't know how to do this.
Sure.
So when you hear
To
this,
rap intricately.
yes, and in a way that shifts and mutates in real time.
Right.
So like once you hear that, then you're like, okay, this 99.9% has to be real.
Right. The other giveaway was how specific Drake was getting with his allusions to other people's specifics, their private life, their business, their record deals, specifically the parts about Kendrick and splitting with TDE and Top Dog, allegedly, according to Drake, over splits. He's basically saying Top...
You're getting worked.
He's basically saying Top, who was the head of the label that made Kendrick, was getting 50% of everything he put out, which even for music is quite high.
It's a lot.
Yeah, considering there's also Interscope, Aftermath, etc., which also alluded to throughout this song. But I'm interested to hear why you say this is the song of the beef so far, because the other thing,
as opposed to the finished version,
and whatever else is flying around the periphery. Because the other thing I think we said to each other right away is that the beat stinks.
Yeah. The beat being bad, in a weird way, that was a tell.
Mm-hmm.
It means you didn't think that hard about it. It means you didn't have it in the chamber.
Right.
It means it wasn't like sitting around waiting for someone to come at you and you're like, oh, well, we just dust off that thing we recorded.
Sure.
Like, it means that they were like, what's the most urgent sounding thing that we have on a hard drive somewhere? Do we know who produced this?
I don't know about the
Like
original.
a type beat?
I don't know about the original. I believe Boy Wonder is being credited with the quote-unquote final
finished,
version, which,
like,
again, not finished because still,
not on
as
streaming.
of when we're recording this on Monday afternoon,
Yep.
not out on streaming services.
But finished.
I don't know. Is it? All right, we'll get
This is
there.
like saying is a Kanye album finished.
Sure.
It's like, sure,
Yeah.
whatever, it's
Yeah.
done. It's done.
CDQ, as we used to say
Yes,
in the
that's
real
true.
leak days.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's not a great beat adds to the sense of urgency, which is just like, what's the thing that we have laying around that feels like it's urgent? It has like a little bit of push. No pun intended. Sorry. So to me, that like the badness of it is like weirdly an asset. It tells me something about the creation of the song.
Right.
Because I feel like we've all listened to enough Drake over the years, and I'm like, that would never survive to like a finished Drake product.
Right. And there are a lot of Drake leaks from over the years. You know that he does multiple versions of a lot of songs. And I do think it's interesting what survived into the second version. So, but first, like, what was your gut reaction to like the punches being thrown here? Both in terms of like humor and severity and the sort of dance between the two.
Okay. So, I mean, I pulled the lyrics up. The fact that, on the one hand, like Metro is the instigator and sort of like the root cause of some of this. Like
Sure, Metro Boomin,
Yeah.
producer of the Future album and
giving the platform
lead
to Kendrick
Drake antagonist, it seems.
gets dismissed in one line.
Half a bar, as Jay says.
Yeah, just you're not here.
Yeah.
Like why? Like I'm resentful that I have to even mention you.
Right. Quite a funny line.
Yeah.
The beat gets taken out in the final version, and that one sings. Yeah.
The stuff. I mean, there's obviously always been long running tension between Drake and The Weeknd.
Frenemies.
Not even frenemy,
But
barely.
they've made up so many
But
times.
like even the making up
Right.
is never convincing.
frigid as a Toronto winter between them. Icy relations.
Is that a Scarborough reference?
You can feel it.
I don't in any way think that they have warm, no pun, but like warm relations with each other.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that dates back to Take Care. Dates back to
10 plus years.
yeah,
at
it's
this
Crew.
point.
I mean,
Yeah.
like basically once Crew Love became whatever Crew Love became, and Abel had to go and find another path. Like I think that was it. I think it was never going to be. And I think for all of Drake's willingness to go toe to toe with folks, I do think he fundamentally respects the talent of other people who are talented. And I think he understands that Abel is talented in a way that he's not. He has a different kind of talent that I think, it's maybe he thinks he can do what Ross does or he can do what Future does, but maybe he doesn't know if he can do what Abel does.
But
I don't
he goes
know.
way harder on Abel in this song than he goes Future, which I want to talk about. But I do like this does seem to be fairly fresh because the Weeknd verse on the second Future album
Yes.
is what really pulls him into this. So you do have the sense that Metro Boomin is inviting anyone who's had lingering tension to be a part of this multi-week assault on Drake's
Did you
character.
watch the TikTok that I sent you?
I did.
It is very
I
funny.
didn't think it was funny, but I did watch it
You didn't think it was funny in concept, or you didn't think it was funny in execution?
in execution.
Hey, we want to appreciate all y'all for coming to the studio to diss Drake. Chris Brown? Y'all beefing?
I said, yo, that got me f***ed up.
All right. See Breezy in the studio. That's cool.
This TikTok said derisive. They're gonna come for you next.
Look, I welcome it. So on the Future song featuring The Weeknd, I mean, The Weeknd is featured all over this tape.
On volume 2.
Yes, we still don't
Trust you.
But he specifically says, "I'm glad I didn't sign my life away."
Yes.
A reference to not ending up with Drake on OVO. And Drake comes at him and his extended crew, his family.
Talking about cash.
Yeah, fairly hard on this. But I do think it's interesting that Future, the song starts with a reference to the Future line that was interpreted as a Drake diss, that Drake is Future's number one fan. Drake says, "How could I be your number one fan when I made you?" But then he basically doesn't come back to Future again. And that's where I think you saying that he has like a fundamental respect for Abel and what Abel does, I think he has a fundamental respect for Future and what Future does.
That's interesting.
And that's another pair where I'm like, I'm old enough to remember tension immediately after What a Time to Be Alive when Future refused to acknowledge its existence. And people used to ask him about it in interviews. And he was like, I'm off that. You know, like it was already something weird from even going back before that to the Tony Montana remix and Drake being whatever, you know, hopping on people's records and then taking them over, like the Versace thing. Like, that's always to me been like a alliance of convenience.
But they've performed together.
They have
fair amount.
extensively. I mean, they have great music together, and that's why I think they've both been able to like put aside whatever lingering suspicions or skepticisms they had about each other. But I also do think it's telling that like Future gets off easiest from here, even though most of this is being done in his name and on his projects. Even though it seems like Metro is the one who's driving.
Do you think it's possible that a lot of the beef that Drake is expressing opinions about here is, in essence, it's professional beef, whereas with Future, potentially, it's personal. And I think, you know, there was this thing that happened where Drake was asked this past weekend, have you pressed the red button yet? And he says, no, not even close. I wonder if it's not so much the distinction of professional, like I respect this person's art, I don't respect this person's art, or I feel like I could do this, but I don't think I could do that. I wonder if it's like business versus personal, and everything that's on this song, this is business, and everything that's being held is personal. I wonder.
Yeah,
I think because there is some chatter on the internet about potential points of intersection in the personal lives.
Right. Well, Drake has a song called What Would Pluto Do on his last project that was originally seen as complimentary and then in hindsight looks quite needling, I would say.
So that to me, like you pointing out that Future doesn't take the barbs or doesn't get the barbs here quite as intensely as everybody else makes me wonder if the stuff that Drake has for Future is frankly much darker.
But don't you think he'd also rather not use it because there could potentially be a world in which he and Future come back together like
there's
he
a
and
world
Meek
where
did?
all of these people come back together.
But we may be approaching a place where that's no longer the case, at least with some of them. And I think Drake is much more likely to leave his relationship, quote unquote, with Kendrick behind than he is with Future, who he actually has a many, many, many years long professional collaboration with. The other thing is, I think Drake is willing to go song for song, verse for verse, line for line with Kendrick as a rapper, whereas like he knows Future is never going to get in the studio and write a diss track. Like what Future's going to do is what Future did on his album. He's going to have a throwaway line, alluding to being, you know, vaguely alluding to being superior to you with some really slick lingo. Like he's just like, this isn't what Future does. Future does not like spar on a record. Future exists on his own planet, on his own plane. And that's why we could talk about who really is in the big three, but like Future is, no matter how many people he's collaborated with, like Future is on his own.
I was thinking about that.
He is a man apart.
I was thinking about that a lot listening to We Still Don't Trust You, because I think when I went into that, I was like, if ever there was a moment where Future was going to, in essence, break character,
Sure.
show a different side, that absolutely not.
Right.
like rigorous, like almost to the point of dullness, like to the point where he'll rap something and I'll be like really? Like that's everybody's watching now. This is what we're doing. There's so much
But
more
he'll
on the
also
line.
surprise you. He'll every now and then he'll like, you know,
It's sprinkles. It's
but
literally
that's
like,
future.
yes, of course, but truly a sprinkle. I don't know. It makes me think that, to your point about Drake and Kendrick, like Drake and Kendrick are sports teams that meet once a year.
Sure.
You know, like it's not a rivalry, or couldn't be a rivalry in a real sense, despite what the rap internet has to say. I've never felt like Drake and Kendrick are rivals. And I think the big three question is like a valid question, because it's like the notion of a big three being Drake, and I want to talk about this more later, but the notion of a big three being Drake, Kendrick, and Cole, 2 out of those 3 people do the same thing, and the other one is Drake. You know what I mean? So it's strange that people put those folks together into a category as if they're all squaring off against each other. Like I don't in any way think that Drake listens to Pimp a Butterfly or Damn even and is like, gotta get in the lab and really like get my reps up. I don't know.
Though it's interesting that one of his lines on here is like that he thinks they have a picture of him on the wall when they're working, that he thinks they're going for what he is. And some of the more effective lines here are when he's saying like, every time you try to go pop, it sucks, basically.
To Kendrick.
Yeah, to
Yeah,
Kendrick.
of course.
The Maroon 5 line, the Taylor line.
Of course. And it's also like you were made to do those things. Like I just do those things effortlessly.
Right.
Like someone forced you to be on this Maroon 5 record.
Right.
Better make it witty.
Better make it witty.
Actually, it's a Maroon 5 record. You actually don't have to make it witty.
Are you want to fact check Drake's disses here? Like
I'm just
a lot of the
basically
internet is
saying
doing?
of all the pop stars that you collaborate with, I think you could probably get away with not being witty on a Maroon 5 song. Simply saying. Be witty on the Taylor song. Don't be witty on the Maroon 5 song.
Also interesting you say that the big three isn't real, because one of the lines that didn't survive into the final version of the Drake diss is where Drake says, "There's 2 of me and my big 3."
Yes.
Whatever. But in the timeline,
Who
so
do you
then
think the third one is?
it's a good
Cash
question.
Cobain.
Yeah. It's currently Cash Cobain or Ian.
Ian.
Yeah.
Hello to Ian.
But so Saturday
did you
goes
wear your
on.
Fordham Prep hoodie today?
I don't have a Fordham Prep hoodie yet, but we're getting them for the whole team.
Yeah.
Saturday goes on. Saturday afternoon comes. Academics is on a live stream. DJ Academics.
Maroon 5 need a verse, you better make it witty. Then we need a verse for the Swifties. Top say drop, you better drop and give them 50.
Who is the new Funk Flex. Like, let's be real.
Yeah, like does he just not leave the house?
I mean, he has a job to do.
No, I know, but I'm saying like I wasn't feeling great this weekend. Like I didn't get outside the house that much. But like if I was feeling normal, I probably would have like gone. It was nice out.
But he knew news was going to break.
Like ran back like Kai Cenat to the basement. Like just like ran back. Okay, fine. So Academics there.
He says, Drake told me stop playing that reference track. Like, stop playing this low quality
Got a
demo.
finished version.
Plays the finished demo. The finished version of, I guess we're calling it push-ups. Drop and give me 50, something like that.
I think push-ups feels right.
Push-ups feels right. It's a good title.
Yeah.
Yes. A reference to the video from After Like That came out of Kendrick
Doing
in the front yard.
Yes.
Doing push-ups. Backyard. I don't know. A yard.
A yard.
A yard. This final version has some parts missing. One was one of the lines aimed at Rick Ross. Do you want to go? You want to go there?
Every song that made it on the chart, he got from Drizzy. Worry about whatever going on with you and
Go ahead, say it.
All right. He seems to be alluding to some connection between Rick Ross and Diddy. Diddy's house was raided by federal investigators recently. It's been hit with a lot of lawsuits.
Yeah.
We don't know that Rick Ross is affiliated here, but Drake seemed to be hinting at something untoward.
Yeah.
The rest is the outro of the song. Different
I
beat.
really liked the
Right.
outro.
So this is
Really
interesting
liked
to
the
me.
outro.
This is really interesting to me is that even in this moment of
Backpedal gang.
backpedal gang, even in this moment of
He should get shirts for everybody.
yeah, of immediacy and fury and got to respond fast. You're on the clock, especially, he set the tempo for that by hitting Meek with back to back. Drake is still editing. He's, I think, one of the only rappers who's really interested in editing himself. And he takes out like what I think is probably the best part of the song, in which he gets really angry at the end, and he seems to say that Kendrick has had a diss track waiting for him for 4 years, and he says, either
go ahead and drop it
or enough from you. This goes to the question of where we think these songs came from. Do you think?
First of all, do you think Kendrick had a song for 4 years?
Yeah, I think if Drake is alluding to something that he believes to be true, like this is all bait, right? This is all like, here's the beginning of my Oppo research file. That's a very specific thing to say. If it's not true,
is it that the song was recorded 4 years ago, or is it that it is a 4-year-long song?
Right.
It's a durational work.
We're gonna find out.
It's been being recorded for 4 years.
Do you think it benefits Drake that both of these versions exist, or do you think, as The Weeknd alluded to on the Future album, that Drake has leakers in his camp and this was the other shoe to drop, was them taking the sting out of his diss track by, in fact, dropping a meaner diss track, but a worse sounding one?
So in essence, the question is, was the original leak intentional?
Yes. Was it a trial balloon, or was it a foiling of a plan? I mean, we don't know the answer.
We don't know the answer. I mean, I think you think it's intentional. Right?
I don't, but I think it actually serves him that both versions exist.
You think it was an actual leak, like a true leak?
It seems a little too...
Who has access? Because it clearly was recorded recently.
Sure.
Like in the last, in the 48 hours before it was heard.
Sure.
How many people, I mean, you have a pretty close camp. How many people have access to those files within 48 hours of recording?
I do think it would be too much of a coincidence for The Weeknd to threaten Drake with leaks saying, we have access to your stuff, and then a leak happens immediely after. I think I don't think The Weeknd got that lucky. I don't
think so either.
I think I think they had a plan, and I think, engineers, studio people, producers, Toronto citizen, I think a mole is a mole, and I don't think Drake is immune.
A traitor.
Exactly. But I do think ultimately he may benefit from the fact that both of these versions are out there.
All right, so there are a few things that we still have yet to really talk about. We have not talked about Jermaine Cole. We have not talked that much about the idea of the big three. Why does that idea exist? Who forced that down our throats? And is it even correct? We also haven't really talked about all the sort of threads that go back and have led to this moment. I mean, Drake, one of the things that Drake seems to be saying here is been waiting.
Yeah, these guys are mad at me.
Yeah, y'all been wanting to do this forever. Frankly, I'm relieved. What an unburdening for me, not just for y'all, but for me. So in part 2, I think we're going to get involved in all of those things. As we go there, first of all, subscribe to youtube.com/popcast to catch part 2 of this and everything else. Should we play a song that doesn't exist?
Yeah.
Shall we conjure just a few precious seconds of 7-minute drill?
Sure. J. Cole.
I came up in the Ville, so I'm good when it's tension. He's still doing shows, but fell off like the Simpsons. Your first was classic, your last was tragic. Your second put sleep, but they gassed it. Your third was massive, and that was your prime. I was trailing right behind, and I just now hit mine. Now I'm front of the line with a comfortable lead. How ironic, soon as I got it, now he wants something with